well, welcome to this presentation from Dr. McLaughlin with students Joshua, Renata, and Lindsay. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So thanks for coming for this little chat here. I want to thank these two folks behind me. Joshua is in science and Lindsay is in arts. One of the nice things about some of the courses I do at upper level, I get a good mixture of arts and science students, and they can bat ideas back and forth between them and bring new experiences. And in terms of new experiences, I did something radically new for myself last semester, hence the title. And basically what I wanted to do in this particular course, which was biomedical ethics, was to try and see if I can move a little bit away from just having thought experiments in class where you say, imagine a situation where, and see if we could do something that the students actually have a hands-on opportunity to use concepts from the class outside of the classroom and then bring those ideas and experiences back into the classroom so that it was not just me that was teaching, and we were not just teaching at that particular time slot. So I just want to, one of the motives for this is I also teach environmental ethics. And I found it somewhat ironic, if I'm using the term correctly, that I'm teaching a course in environmental ethics and we're in a classroom pretty much looking like this one that I captured here. It's actually in the International Students Building with no windows whatsoever. And we're talking about nature. So, we have these students, sitting there and we're talking about the wonders of nature and they don't even have a window to look out of. So when I was doing this course a couple years ago, I decided to bring in guest speakers and we go for walks, and just before, we started today, taking them to the animal health tech to talk about, animal rights and animal welfare and these particular issues. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to try something a little bit different. When I've been teaching here for 23 years now, and you want to spice it up a little bit, not necessarily for the students, because the students are always new to the topic, but when you're doing it year after year, you want to sort of, have some fun. And I'm comfortable enough that I will allow myself to try some things and see if they work and see if they don't. So, sorry. But with that said, the point that I wanted to make clear through all of this was that whatever kind of kudos this particular project got, the focus was not on me. I didn't want it to be about me. I didn't want it to be about what I was teaching them. I didn't want to get involved in the sense of, oh, let me take charge and tell you what to do. I wanted to hand it over to the students and see what would happen. And frankly, this was my first time doing this sort of project. The initiative came from a high school teacher from the Lower Mainland who's been doing this sort of thing for numbers of years, where she's been teaching a course in social justice and depressing the heck out of the students, but then getting them to actually participate and do something and then realize that anyone and everyone can do something and make a change. So the initiative too was also to get outside of the classroom so that the learning experience was at any time whatsoever, and it wasn't a formal situation, that the students would be learning as they're doing this and as they're, walking to school thinking about it or having a shower and thinking about what they need to do. They weren't focusing necessarily on, biomedical ethics, but in the background there was this issue of how do I take what I'm learning and apply it to the particular topic. So that's one thing. It wasn't time focused and it wasn't place focused. The idea, we're in a classroom, we do this for 3 hours, now go away, forget about it, come back next 3 hours, next week. It's something I wanted them to continue to keep on doing. So this is the part of the layout that I gave the students at the beginning. I wanted them to pick a topic that they were interested in, that they had some sort of passion about, that if they heard about a news item or there was something going on in the world that they were interested in, or if there was something connected to their own personal lives that they had a concern about that they wanted to learn more about. This was something that I hoped that they would come up with. So not only was the fact that they had to find an issue that was a medical concern, but how was it an ethical issue? And the focus here was not on, this is how things are done, but rather why are things being done this way and not other ways? And what can we do about it, what people ought to do, what they ought not to do, and so on. So that was the additional element that I brought to this. They had to come up with a solution. And then how can we help them in achieving that particular solution? They had to work obviously within the confines of the amount of time that we had. They couldn't solve the world's problems, but maybe they could tackle a small one. So they had to come up with a detailed plan and not just some hand waving. And then, come up with some ideas about, well, what if something goes wrong? If you're planning an outside activity and it's raining outside, what are you going to do in that particular case? You need to have a backup plan. So, for example, while I'm talking here, if the computer wasn't working, we have the PowerPoint on sheets of paper. So there's a backup plan. Then what the students did was they went into pairs because there's 30 students, and I had them do pairing up after some exercises. They gave a short 5-minute overview, and then the students voted on the topics that they wanted to work with. And it wasn't just a matter of which was the best one, but also things like which was the most realistic one, which one could we do in a short time frame, which one did not involve spending money, and so on. Some very practical concerns here. So the ones that weren't chosen, it wasn't a matter that they weren't good, it was that we just perhaps didn't have enough time to cover them. So these are the proposals that came forward. And we're going to have Joshua and Lindsay here talk a little bit about their proposals that they worked on and the teams that they were on. But you get a sense of the radical range here, and anything from autism and the anti-vaccine movement to lack of dental care for people who are homeless in Kamloops, for example. There was issues about, advanced directives. We talked about the idea of people having a stronger voice. So, the student idea was to how can we make sure that they're aware that they have this voice. Flu shots, abortion issues, inappropriate uses of the emergency facilities. I had some people who worked at the hospital as volunteers, and they saw this as a particular issue, and a very important one too. But we couldn't really go and add another wing to the hospital, so you had to come up with another way to do this, right? So I'm going to hand it over to Joshua here. Yeah, you can sit here, please.
Okay, sure. Hi, my name is Josh. I'm a third-year Bachelor of Science student majoring in cellular molecular microbial biology. And I had the pleasure of taking Jeff's biomedical ethics course last semester. And I also was one of the 2 group leaders of the Organ Donation Ethics in Action project. So for our project, what we pretty much wanted to do is raise awareness about the shortage in transplantable organs, as well as the ethical implications that it generates, such as transplant tourism, which is where people travel to other, usually third world countries, and they can purchase organs such as kidneys. And of course, it generates a lot of ethical problems, and I felt that related well to this class. So we felt we can address this issue by not only raising awareness, but we could also actually sign up people to become organ donors, because it's become a very actually easy process. We can just do it through online or fill out a pamphlet. So we can actually get people to sign up right at the booths we set up. So what we did, we set up booths and posters around campus, and even other places such as like the Terminal Capital Center as well. And we used like social media to get our message across before we set up the booth, just so we had a good turnout. And we actually got some really good positive feedback. So for spreading our message, we used like getting on the Moodle homepage, for example, or the TRU Athletics website, or even just getting in the newspaper. I actually got myself featured in one of the articles for the Omega newspaper, and it was definitely a really cool experience to get involved with the campus. We also contacted BC Transplant because they have a lot of experience with setting up these type of organ drives or organ awareness campaigns. And they were very helpful, and they sent us a lot of information and kits and stuff that would help us with our project. So for example, at the booth, we would have a number of people. One or two people would be helping bring people and sort of educate everyone about what's going on and what's the ethical issues. Another person would be sort of manning the computer. So we had a computer set up at the booth, and people could sit down, and if they have their care card number on them, they can sign up right on the spot, because that's all you need to sign up. Or even if they didn't have a care card, we can give them a pamphlet from BC Transplant, and they could sign up at home when they have their care card. Also at the booth, we had like cookies, of course, with little hearts on them, just to raise the theme of the project, as well as like an organ thermometer, just to track our our progress as we got more and more organ donors. Okay, now fun little stuff like eyeball candies as well, and picture frames so we can spread it on Facebook and Instagram of what we're doing. So next one. Oh, okay. Yeah, so the results were very positive, I would say. We got a really good feedback from the campus, and even from the other community members from like the TCC and stuff. As you can see, we got over 100 people registered as organ donors, and that's not including the people we just sort of informed and like maybe they can think about. We're not sure if they signed up, so that's not including those. But actually, we got like over 100 in total. And of course, and we also got recognition from the BC Transplant page. We shared some photos on there, and then they posted what we're doing on their page, and we got a lot of good feedback from there too as well. And and then also, of course, some more positive feedback from the faculty and other students. So yeah, I think it was a success. Yeah.
I have a mic.
Okay.
So I'm Lindsay, and I'm a fourth-year philosophy major, and I was also in Miss McLaughlin's class last semester. And I was part of the group that worked on blood donation, which it actually worked out well, but the two things that got chosen were really related. All right. So yeah, I was part of the blood donation group, and we kind of took a similar approach. They worked with BC Transplant, and we worked with Canadian Blood Services. They were starting to try and put a table on campus to promote future blood drives as well. So we were able to get some material like posters, and they were going to provide training with us or to work at their table. But as Jeff had mentioned, in our proposal we had to talk about things that could go wrong, and what went wrong was that Blood Services couldn't get a table on campus without being charged money. And because they're not a student organization, and therefore they kind of bailed on us essentially, but they still gave us the posters. So what we did is we went about trying to secure tables, and we ended up doing one in conjunction with the blood donor group, and also we set up one in the first floor of Arts and Education building. We commandeered a table. So we also created our own promotional materials. Like we made a poster and bookmarks. I'll come back to that one. There we go. And these materials had our ethical message on them, so why people should donate blood. There's obviously a blood shortage, but our main focus was that, in Canada, there's an expectation that when you need blood, you'll be able to receive it, so you should also, it's in you to give, so you should also provide blood. So yeah, we set up a table in Old Main and also in Arts and Education. And we had a sign-up sheet for people who were interested, and they would put their name and email down. Unlike organ donation, blood donation is something you can always do. So this was voluntary. Just because you put your name down didn't mean you had to go, but it meant that you were interested, and we would send out a reminder email closer to the date. We were basically advertising for a date in January because the December dates were really close. And also everybody who signed up was eligible for a draw that we did for a 3-pound bag of gummy bears. There was a pound of gummy bears for every life you could save by donating blood. And what we tried to do is keep the message really positive and try to engage with people in that sense. We found that a lot of blood donation, I guess, ads that are around sometimes really focus on the negative aspects of blood donation, and we figured that that was a little bit off-putting. So by trying to focus on positive messages, we were able to engage with a lot of people. We were actually really successful. Between the 2 booths, we managed to sign up 90+ people. Lots of those people had already donated blood but didn't know where to go in Kamloops, for instance. So we had lots of people who were interested as well, and we got lots of new people. We were able to provide them with some information, like maybe popular myths, you know, I don't know, about like whether or not if you have tattoos or piercings, you know, when you can donate, things like that. Lots of people had valuable questions, and we even managed to learn some things. Dr. Michael Maida stopped by our booth randomly, and he was involved with Canadian Blood Services for a long time, so he was able to answer some of our questions, and we had a really, you know, positive experience that way. So on the bookmarks, for instance, that we handed out, we basically included the process to try and, you know, show people that it's really not that scary. Donating blood takes an hour, and only 10 minutes of that is actually blood donation. And we tried to sort of focus on some issues, like, you know, 1 in 7 people entering a hospital need blood, and that, you know, the number one reason why people say they donate is because they think that it's the right thing to do and it's a good thing. So we tried to focus on some positive aspects like that. And we also included the phone number for where you can contact to make an appointment and when the next dates were. And yeah, we generally had quite a lot of success. People were really, really excited about it. And I think we got, I don't know how many people actually went and donated, but I know that when one of our group members tried to book an appointment for that December date, it was full. So we like to think we had something to do with that. Yeah, that was our particular.
And because of this, actually, I went on Wednesday to give blood for the first time. But unfortunately, I was refused because I have traveled so much. I've been to certain parts of the world where there are the potential for blood infections. So I was told I could never give blood in Canada. So after this process went on, we started a little bit late into the semester, about halfway or so. I wanted to have the students do a self-evaluation. Not an evaluation in the sense of, you know, give myself a grade here, but rather, you know, reflect upon what they've done. So it was for them to reflect on their particular participation, but really it was for my benefit then that I told them that whatever they can provide me so that I can then take this information forward and use it the next time, because this is all new for all of us here, and I would appreciate all the feedback that I could get, whether positive or negative, and suggestions by all means. So these are the questions that I asked them, and for the remainder of the talk, I wanted to go through some of the observations that the students made about this, because this is why I said at the outset, I didn't want it to be about, you know, you have to learn something from Jeff. I wanted them to be able to have the skills to go and learn from each other and be able to share that information. So in terms of the biggest issue, there was a couple. One of them was for the time factor. There wasn't enough time to always do what you want to do. And secondly, because there was large groups, I broke, with 30 people, I broke them into 2 groups, and the groups were quite large. One reason I did that was because, frankly, having never done it before, I didn't want to have a lot of projects on the run, and I wanted to be able to have a little bit of control so that if things went sideways, it wasn't going to turn into a chaotic situation. Many of the students, reflected on the fact, as Lindsay mentioned, that there was an issue about getting a table, that there were some roadblocks that were put up, and these are not necessarily roadblocks that were intentional, but rather I found that when you're trying to come up with a plan and a project, you want to do X, but just because you want to do X doesn't mean that it's realistic, that you can actually do it. I want to, open up all the classrooms for 24 hours a day on Sunday. Well, why can't I do that type of thing, So some of these were real issues, and other ones are simply a matter of, you have to step back and reflect upon it. So this is why the idea of having a plan B was important. And while at the beginning there wasn't a plan B for some of the things, they were quickly able to jump in and say, we got a problem here, how do we solve it? And the two groups actually came together and worked together, which was wonderful. In terms of what they could have done differently or better, again, there was the time consideration. Part of this was the fact that, it was being near the end of term, so there are other commitments that students have, exams and essays and so on. But what was also interesting was that they were aware of this, that they, I was curious to see if they would actually come out and say, oh, I could have done something better. Right? And in fact, they did. So there was, what was really nice was this level of self-awareness and not self-criticism, but being objective about what they were actually doing. Many people, and I put this in brackets because I received this comment quite a number of times, was that the people were shy, that they were shy within the group, and that when they were at a booth, it was kind of shy for them too, and it was difficult for them. And it made me realize that, here's something that I hadn't reflected upon. I give them an assignment and I don't think about, their personality of being shy. And, the fact that if I have a class where they're not saying too much, is it because they're not interested? They don't understand the material, they don't care, or maybe it's they're shy. Right? And I remember being shy too, so it really brought me to go, whoa, this is an interesting point. But not only that, what was really fascinating was they were aware of their shyness, but they all worked through it. They all looked at, the other people in the group and said, oh, I see how they're doing it, so I can do that. So that was really a nice feature. Projects, right? Students don't like doing group projects for a variety of reasons that we're well aware of, and we can all have our own stories about, someone having to do everything and someone not doing anything. So it is an issue. So here's someone who said, they were skeptical about getting involved in doing projects, but they actually enjoyed it and it turned into a democratic process. Another, we had no real issues and, worked well in groups. I'm not shy. I like doing this kind of stuff. Okay. We suffered some setbacks, but we were able to pull through. Observations. I expected a colder reaction from students, but they seemed genuinely interested, as both Lindsay and Josh talked about. As well, made it a goal that we're not forcing something on them, that you have to do this, that, you're being immoral if you're not giving up a kidney, so this is and the fact of the matter was they were many times over and over again, they're like, wow, lots of students were really interested in learning more about this. So even if they didn't sign up, as Josh said, at that moment, they're going to go away and have some background knowledge, have some philosophical knowledge, and think about it perhaps. As Lindsay was saying, the idea of giving blood for some people, there's a variety of reasons. And, this person said, it's interesting because I would give blood in order to do my part. Right? I believe if people were more often presented the ethical arguments in lieu of the facts, so don't just say this is how many people are dying, right? But this is why you should be concerned about how many people are dying, they would be more open. So that was sort of, for me, that was like, okay, that sort of ethical component actually has a role to play. The candy, we thought it'd be, we got to bring someone here. Why would, we got to give them something? And it turned out that apparently the students weren't really interested in that. It's nice to have a cookie and so on, but they really wanted the information, which was quite useful. I learned that the most mundane of issues can have a massive impact. It wouldn't take a dramatic increase in the amount of people donating, but it's a case where a person simply thinks, well, someone else is going to do it. In terms of applying what they learned from the class and what they took away from the class and what they actually brought back to the class, that was a key here. It was nice to take all this theoretical philosophy and ethics and actually apply it and make a difference. Right. I believe that university campuses, I loved this one. I believe university campuses are full of students with bright ideas who want to make a difference in the world and yet have limited resources or limited support with which to act on their ideas. This project encourages people to think about what they wish could be different in society and figure out what could be done to affect change. Young people need to be pushed to think about these things, and for that reason, I think the project was a great idea. So, of course, they got bonus marks for that one, right? This is the first time involved in class project. I found it was refreshing. It was possible to have an observable impact instead of working hard on something that's presented once and then you move on. It was refreshing to take what was fundamentally learned in the classroom and apply it to a real-world issue. What originally sparked my interest was the fact that there was a measure of concrete and meaningful change that we could initiate. And I think with the numbers that Lindsay and Josh were telling you, it was well beyond my wildest dreams. This project forced us to put physical action behind the mental exercise of studying morals and ethics. It was interesting to see people develop firm ethical stances on a variety of topics. So you would have people coming up to them and they would have to engage in an ethical discussion about these things, outside of doing that in the classroom. I'm a big supporter of the community and getting people involved, and this was a perfect opportunity to get out and talk to people. I believe I'll look back at this project for years to come as one of the highlights of my undergraduate education, right? Wow, right? But then, of course, I had to put the bottom one in, right? Not everyone is going to say, this is the greatest thing you've ever done, and way to go, Jeff. Right? No, I was surprised that I actually only got one or two negative comments. I thought I would get a lot of negative comments about, it's too much work, and the groups were too big, we couldn't do anything. They saw those issues, but they dealt with them, which was significant. So this person, unfortunately, didn't like working in groups, didn't like the concept, and it happens, right? You have to expect that. The ethical aspects, right? This is, what did you get out of this? Right? The ethical aspects regarding our topic of blood donation really hit the message home. Not just for me, but for other people who are not aware of the ethical theories concerning the issue. As Lindsay pointed out, the fact that 1 pint of blood can save 3 lives is what got me to vote for this project. As well as that here in Canada, with our universal healthcare system that we all use, we should feel obligated to give blood to those who need it now. So on one level, there is the fact of the matter, and the second one is the issue of, I have an obligation here as someone who is, taking from the healthcare system, can I give anything back? And finally, this particular piece, Aristotle's virtue ethics fits with becoming an organ donor in that you will eventually be benefiting society by donating your organs to someone in need or to help research. In my opinion, you're becoming a good person. Organ donation also respects the autonomy of a person because one can consent to what they wish to have done while still competent and have a stable set of values. right? I mean, clearly, what's great here is you can see the terminology that I was introducing that they're putting into effect. Issues such as transplant tourism that Josh was mentioning show how the autonomy of some is not respected and how organs are becoming merchandise that can be bought, which may distort what it means to be human or the worth of a human. Well, I had them do an assessment, so I did one myself. These are some of the observations that I had about the event, and hopefully this might help. The biggest issue, first of all, I'd never done it before. I didn't know exactly what I wanted and how I was going to go about doing it. I did some hand waving, right? And the students were on board with that. And in fact, the flip side, the positive side about that was they had to do more work on their own and figure it out rather than being dictated what they had to do. I didn't have to tell them what they had to do, what they couldn't do. What could I have done differently? Better direction. I could have given better direction. I could have, at that time, I could have said, here's some things to be concerned about and think about. But now with the self-assessments here, I have that input from the group that I can say, oh, that's what happened before. Now I can tell the next group of students, here are some things that your peers found out, and please, think about them. And having a longer debriefing session at the end, being able to bring it back together and wrap it up. Because it was the end of semester, it was, a bit of a problem. Observations, well, first of all, I was extremely proud of the students. As Joshua said, I was getting emails from faculty and staff saying, oh, what a great thing you've done. And I'm like, it's not me, right? It's these people here behind me who did all of this. And that was just wonderful. Observation, another one is, I don't know if it's a one-time deal. I don't know if it just so happened that I had two great groups of students that worked really well together, and what's going to happen the next time? Is it going to turn into some problems? And as I pointed out, the fact that they were able to reflect upon their own issues, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, but their own awareness of how they approach things, and then go, is this a positive thing that I'm contributing, or can I do something about it? Really useful. They were amazing in that they were willing to do scary things, And by that I mean the people that you're going to go up to a stranger and ask them, have you thought about, giving someone an organ? Right? Talking to them about a particular issue. That's pretty significant. Recommendations, what I saw, I didn't need to micromanage. While they were talking about their projects, I might have had some great ideas like, oh, you could do this and oh, you could do that. Well, then it's my project now, so let them, pat themselves on the back for what they're actually doing. I tried to tell them not to reinvent the wheel. Lots of things have been done out there for, decades and for charity work and so on. So by all means, look for best practices. But also, given technology and the way things are moving with social media, you can maybe explore doing something different. So, do I recommend other faculty do it? I don't know. Part of this is that, as I said here, is that if everyone starts doing it, then it becomes less special, I think. For the individuals. That might just be, my own bias. There is a concern, I think, of charity overload. As we know at Christmas time, you're constantly asked for donation and after donation. If it was spread out over the year, you would be probably more comfortable with doing something rather than, here's another one, right? It is a lot of work for the students. Right? Have to recognize that. But I also wanted to point out that it's not just about, what can we in arts or sciences or in trades or in other areas, what can we do as a division, but rather build it towards the particular course that the students are participating in. And that's why, it's not about doing ethics. I don't want everyone on campus to do ethics, right? Because that's something that is, I'm interested in. If you're interested in, biology or chemistry or mathematics, how can you take the theory and the practice and bring those together? So I suggested for Josh and Lindsay to come up with some ideas off the top of their head, and let's throw some ideas out for what people can do. So I'll hand it back to Lindsay first.
All right. So we kind of had some ideas for other arts classes as well. I'm a history minor, so there's a bunch of role-playing games that history classes do. Dr. Michael Gorman does them a lot. So what we were thinking is, you could use those and maybe do them more as plays for kids. I mean, you don't have to be in a history class to learn about important things in history. They're really interesting that way. For politics, actually, I got this out of Dr. Hanlon's class. You could do displays about whether or not something is actually fair trade or if it's just a label they put on something. With sociology, there's plenty of awareness campaigns for issues with like education, violence, inequality, things like that. There's kind of it was a little bit difficult to think of specific things, but once you kind of came up with one, it was easy to start spitballing and thinking of different classes that you could easily apply it to. So that was for the arts anyways.
And of course, these are the sciences. As a third-year science student, I haven't, well, considering this was also my first philosophy class, I haven't really done any projects like this, especially involved with the campus or community for that matter. So I think it would be definitely good to bring this into this faculty. For example, in biology, especially in third year, we're learning a lot about diseases and stuff and the mechanisms, and I feel like everyone, they can get to really know something that they could explain it, I think, very well. So for example, if we were doing Alzheimer's, one disease actually I am studying this semester, for that, if we want to raise awareness about it, we can do like memory games or something just to interact with the students, and just sort of on top of that, we can just sort of explain to them, why is it important, and because we definitely have gotten a good chance to learn about about the disease as well. So yeah, so for biology, that'd be great. Chemistry, there's all bachelor science students have to take chemistry courses, so this could apply to all science students. We could go to elementary schools, sort of like Eureka, but we would have it'd be more included of all the science students, and go and do like just little fun science experiments just to get the kids involved and just to make science more fun for both the university students and the kids. As well as for the higher level chemistry students, they could do raising awareness of different types of chemicals as well, and that could be very applicable to a lot of the stuff going on campus as well. And I think students would be interested in that as well. And for the more natural sciences and physics, they could go, for example, treasure hunting around campus for like geocaching and stuff, and also raising awareness for environment. And I think we do see that, but of course we could definitely apply it more, definitely. And I think that'd be good for the science faculty. So, yeah.
So here's some pictures, actually. Josh,
Oh,
if
yeah.
you want to walk through these.
Yeah, these are some pictures. So yeah, we don't only set up at the on campus like Science Building Old Main. This is actually at the TCC as well. So there's Tasia in the photo. She's actually the other group leader who helped. And like the thermometer type that I was talking about was actually the little cutout of a human there. So what we did is whenever we signed up a person, we would put a picture of an organ on there just to fill it up. And then our goal was easily matched just by filling it up. And we also had like little cutouts of a person with organs they can take a picture on. And these are the pictures that we put on Instagram or something just to spread the message. And we got people to sign up there as well. And then this is actually all our group. We have the blood donation group, and then that's me on the side. This is when we shared the table in Old Main. And yeah, I think it was a really good experience as well. We had the full package, the blood donation and the organ donation at the same time. I'm not sure, Lindsay, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's really important because a lot of people who need a viable organ, if there's not enough blood available for them, then they can't get that organ, etc. So it actually worked really well that our two groups were together in that way. We got to really feed off of each other and kind of raise awareness for each other's campaigns as well.
Yeah, it worked out good. Even though we didn't plan it, but it definitely worked out good in the end. And somewhere just in the science building, we had little costumes too, just to designate what we were doing. And a little computer set there, people would sit down, and a really quick process just to sign up. Yeah, and just actually the banner right there was supported by supplied by BC Transplant, so they helped out a lot too. So it was good.
So just to give you a heads up on what you can expect from my classes this term, I have two classes going right now. One is environmental ethics and one is healthcare ethics. So the students last year gave me the confidence to try this again. And so this is what we are going to be working on, and they have been working on this for quite some time now. So we have, a continuation of the donor idea for stem cells. The next one is we have a Do Not Recycle campaign. If you notice that all the bins for recycling are overflowing with garbage, the idea here is that people are focusing too much on recycling rather than reducing, or reusing. So this is an interesting initiative. There's a proper pharmaceutical disposal campaign that many people will take their expired drugs and flush them down the toilet or put them in landfills. And this actually has an impact on the environment and on the wildlife. So this is something that they're going to be doing. And it's going to amount to basically telling students to, bring drugs to campus. And to get rid of them. Smoking on campus is still an issue that people are concerned with, and they want to sort of, ease people into that, again, without the shaming and the finger pointing, but the awareness issue here that's going on. The flu, recognition that people have elderly in homes, and people are not getting the flu shot because they don't think they need it, but they're going to places where people who, if they do get the flu, it is much more of a serious risk. And then finally, clean water and girls' education. This is a very thoughtful one in that of course, there's the issue of whether there's clean water in parts of the world, but the recognition that for getting clean water, many times it's young women or the girls that actually have to go and get the clean water for their families instead of going to school. Well, the boys might go to school, the girls have to be the ones that are going out and walking kilometers and coming back. So clean water is actually, impacting education issues. So this is, some great ideas here, and we hope that some of it will help people change their minds about things, or at least become more aware. And that's primarily what I'm up to, is getting people to be aware. Okay, so thank you very much for your time. I know we're out of time here. Are there any quick questions, or?
Have you heard anything back from Canadian Blood Services about whether or not their overall donations are up in a constant manner now, or because there's been a couple of cycles of donations that have hit the city since then?
Yeah, I haven't heard. They contacted me right after the proposal and said that they had some new initiatives. When I went on Wednesday, I actually recognized TRU students there,
Good.
Which was quite interesting. Yeah.
Any response from facilities about the being able to get a table for something that is
That's
kind of
silly.
Yeah, I mean, and this was, and the issue was, you have a student who says, I want a table, but then it's like, okay, I want a table for this particular project from this particular class. So that's when I was able to step in and say, yes, these people are working on this project, and heads up, in January you're going to get a few more like this too.
so they were receptive to
So
that?
they are, yes, they are receptive now.
For
Yeah.
us, because we had an issue with blood services not being able to get that table, so the organ donation group was nice enough to let us kind of share their table. But I also knew from tabling with PHP that you don't technically need to book a space in A&E, so you just kind of have to colonize a table and sit by the door. So we did that, and that worked out.
Trades is
fine.
similar too, just so
Yeah.
you know, Trades is pretty good about being able to set
Yeah,
tables
no
up.
no one had a problem with it. I mean, we were prepared to move if somebody had an issue, but no one said anything, and we had lots of positive responses. So it was worked that way. I mean, it was a good plan B in that sense. Like, we knew that, okay, well, we can do this.
Yeah. What were the, I'm interested about this blood donor thing, about the negative comments. What were the negative comments about donating? I was curious about that.
People, I guess, were, I'm not so sure, I didn't really hear too much negative comments, so much as people were just really apprehensive of doing it for whatever reasons. They're scared of needles or.
Oh.
And some nationalities, I believe.
Or they're scared of it being painful. And then there was we actually had a lot more questions about people thinking they couldn't donate blood for, they take certain things or whatever, so they were just like, yeah, I can't donate blood because of that, but then we found out they could. Like, for instance, marijuana use was actually a question that we got asked a lot, and you can donate blood.
You can actually show up stoned.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, so we got that answer, and it was good to know.
I actually asked that question when I donated.
Yeah.
Not that I smoke it, but I mean.
Well,
anymore.
it's not in your, and so we asked about that, and they're like, yeah, it's
Yeah, I
fine.
said, is there a problem with the pot smoking? I don't smoke anymore, but I'm just curious about now. Like, she says, no, a person coming.
A lot of students were like, oh, are you interested in this? And they're like, well, I smoke weed, so I can't. And it's like, well, you can, actually. It's not an excuse. And we've actually managed to entice people by kind of, they're like, do you like saving lives and eating candy?
But think about it, you got yourself like a cookie at the end, so if you've been smoking.
Oh, we had gummy bears.
Munchies.
We had a draw for like a lot of gummy bears, so.
This is a great project, thanks guys. How do you deal with free rider problem with students in groups? Like I find it's horrifying where we have students graduating without any experience with working in groups or public speaking, and it's kind of ridiculous. And so I do group work in all my classes, but there's always free riders. They don't do work. And then how much do you weigh the assessment for something like this versus?
Well, I mean, this was, the first trial, and that's one reason why I put the self-assessment in there, and I did get people who said, yeah, I didn't do very much. I could have done a lot more. Other people did stuff, and they were honest about it, right? In terms of, because the group was too big, frankly, it was too big. You had too many people with few people going, what can I do, right? So that was partly, my fault. I think it's always going to be an issue, but as I said, when they were honest about it, in terms of marking, I'm like, okay, you didn't do that part, but you're honest about your evaluation, so you get, full marks for that, by all means.
You can also do a peer eval. I
Yeah.
do group work in practically every one of the communication courses I teach, except for possibly one. And there's a peer evaluation, and it's like a 3-question evaluation.
Yeah.
1, did everybody share the load equally?
Yeah.
2, if somebody didn't share the load equally, can you describe what happened?
Right.
3, do you feel that the lack of work by one or more members deserves the fact there should be reconsideration of their amount of marks that comes out of the course?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And basically, if like 3 people out of 4 are saying, this person here
Yeah.
freeloaded,
Right.
didn't do anything,
Right.
then what I do is I'll have a meeting with that 4th person, and I'll sit them down in my office and say,
Yeah.
this is the report.
Yeah.
What do you have to say? Because I'm thinking about adjusting your grade.
Right. Right.
It's a part of
Yeah.
reporting and assessing.
Yeah, I have a problem where it's almost midterm and they don't, and so the self-reflection at the end is like, it's pretty obvious that it's undeniable. Who's not working, but then there's, when you're going into it and a team is suffering because, and I don't know, like, so do you balance so that you have a team and part of, and hypothetically half the team's not doing anything, do you take that into consideration to award the other team members on that count?
Well, I would think that the students would be comfortable enough with me to be able to say, hey, we're not, some people aren't pulling their weight, and I would come in and say, hey, okay, who's doing what? And, what could you do a little bit more of, or,
Great. Yeah.
it's difficult, by all means.
Yeah.
So have you made adjustments to group sizes then? Like I see
Yes.
there's a lot of things going on here.
Yeah, so now instead of, there's 7 and 9 group sizes. Yeah. And I also suggested this time, okay, here's what one of you can do. One of you can do the research. One of you can do this. One of you might do that. It doesn't have to be those things, but here's some ideas for what you could do. So if you're shy, for example, well, you could maybe go do the research component. Or, if you have an artistic background and you don't want to sit at a booth, well, maybe you can do, some of those issues. Or the baking, if that's something, yeah. To play to their strengths, and I say to them, when you're sitting here brainstorming, what can you bring to the table? Great, well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.